This is Nine's live coverage of the 2012 US presidential election.
Good afternoon, everyone. Peter Overton here. Welcome to the Nine Network's coverage of the results in the US presidential election. In the next few hours, we should know which man will be installed in the White House for the next 4 years, Democrat and sitting President Barack Obama or Republican contender Mitt Romney. As leader of the United States, he will effectively be the most powerful man in the Western world. Many of the polls on the East Coast have already closed. It will be several more hours, though, before the polls close across the time zones on the West Coast. Joining me in the studio, it's a delight to welcome former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd. Welcome.
Good to be on the program, Peter.
Nice to see you. Tom Switzer from the US Studies Centre at the University of Sydney. Welcome, Tom.
Peter.
And, of course, my colleague here at the Nine Network, Deborah Knight, a former US correspondent who covered the re-election of George W. Bush. Welcome, Deb.
Good afternoon, Pete.
Nice to see you. We'll be crossing live to US Bureau Chief Robert Penfold, who's with President Obama in his hometown of Chicago, and US correspondent Denham Hitchcock with Mitt Romney in Boston. Plus, special insight from our political editor, Laurie Oakes from Parliament House in Canberra, and the results, of course, as they come in from America's ABC television network. So, to our studio guests first up. To Kevin Rudd. Mr Rudd, how do you see it as the polls have closed in some of those states? I think we've got 11 states closed now out of the 50 as we go to air.
A couple of quick calls I've just made. One is in nationwide, what the Democrats are saying centrally from Washington is there's nothing they've seen so far which presents for them any surprises. The one state they anticipated to lose, which President Obama won last time, Indiana, is going to the Republicans. They expected that. President Obama didn't campaign there. Virginia, hugely important state. The folk I've spoken to on the ground in Northern Virginia, which is critical to whether the president takes that state or not, because that's where the strongest Democrat vote lies. The turnout there has been super strong, which is a good sign for the Democrats. There's queues still of 2.5 hours to be processed through, despite the fact that the polling booths closed about a half an hour or an hour ago. And finally, the first takeout of Ohio. About 30,000 votes counted. So far, the Republicans are ahead, but no one knows where the votes are coming from, and the Democrats aren't faintly fazed by that. Early, but so far, the Democrats are quietly confident.
Tom Switzer from the US Studies Centre at the University of Sydney. Ohio, as Kevin mentioned, they say it's basically to become the president of Ohio. That's the crucial state, isn't it?
The battleground of all battlegrounds. And you may recall in 2004, the Bush John Kerry standoff went all the way down to the wire in Ohio, so much so that the winner was not declared until the morning. So it's conceivable this may happen in 2012.
OK, Deb Knight, your feeling so far?
I think it's going to be very similar to 2004. I think it will be down to Ohio, and we possibly won't get a result until tomorrow as well. I think it's very interesting that Obama has two versions of his speech prepared for tonight, both a victory and a concession speech. But Mitt Romney has only prepared a victory speech, so there is supreme confidence amongst the Republican camps. And the fact that Mitt Romney has actually been out rallying on voting day, which is highly unusual. You don't usually see the contenders. They take a break from the rallies and they actually get together with their campaign workers. He's been in Pennsylvania and in Ohio. Pennsylvania, it's not clear whether or not that will go to the Republicans. The Democrats have been very confident there. But I think it's going to be a close result of the polls, as the polls have been showing, and I think we could be in for a long afternoon, a long night in the United States. OK,
Deb, that is the rant, the cry. It's too close to call, and we've seen that in the polls. But I just want to bring up Nate Silver, who's a very well-respected pollster from the United States. He's basically saying the chances of Obama's re-election is 92% with 315 electoral votes to 223 for Mitt Romney. So that's not too close to call. That's saying this is what's going to happen. So, you know, why the difference, do you think? Because he's very well respected.
He is indeed. And I think that Nate Silver from the New York Times really represents the conventional wisdom in media circles and certainly the betting markets. It gets very confusing because the national vote is very close. It'll be probably a 50-50, 49, 49, 48, 48 result. Maybe 1 point here or there. But what's crucial is those battleground states. It's the electoral college vote that counts. And the key for the winner needs to be to amass 270 electoral college votes out of 538. That's really the key. Why Silver's so confident is he believes, and the polling backs this up, in those crucial battleground states, about 10 out of the 50 states that are voting today, they are more than likely to vote for the president.
Laurie Oakes, what's your feeling, your read on this as we go to air, and your interest, your passion
Well, I'm certainly interested, as are all Australians. I think something like 70% of Australians in the most recent poll I saw want Barack Obama to win, and poor old Mitt Romney doesn't even crack double figures in this country, so it's just as well he's not running here. But judging from the polls, Peter, you'd have to say that it looks like Obama, and I would bet, getting back to what Deb was saying, I bet someone in Mitt Romney's camp is preparing a concession speech. They won't let him go into that blind.
Well, Laurie, you mentioned that I think you said 70% of Australians want Barack Obama to win. He, of course, visited Australia, and the reaction was, you know, he very, very charismatic person, and the reaction was very strong. A global poll, I got this from the Daily Mail in the UK, they surveyed 570,000 people across the globe, 36 countries, I think, and the overwhelming man that they want back in the White House is Barack Obama. So, interesting times, interesting polls, but as Tom said, it's down to the Electoral College, and the 270 Electoral College votes is the magic number. And when you look at a map, while it's very dominant in terms of the red Republican colours and blue for the Democrats are less, it's those heavily populated states where they have the clout.
That's right, and each state has members of the Electoral College that are roughly proportionate to the size of the state in terms of popularity. So populous states like California on the west coast and New York on the east coast, they will have a lot of Electoral College votes, whereas small states like South Dakota and Delaware will have a small amount of votes. But again, it all gets back to these 10 key battleground states. We're going to see a lot about these other states winning. It's safe to assume that 40 states are already known to be Republican or Democrat. It'll come down to these 10 states.
I think all American political pundits have been burnt since 1948, and that's the famous Truman-Dewey presidential election campaign. And therefore, no one will actually chance their arm these days, because you know that was a total upset. Yeah. Today, if Governor Romney pulls through, I think it would be in a similar league, because I agree with Tom, in the battleground states, everything I've seen, bar maybe one or two, it looks as though the on-the-ground work by the Democrats over the last 4 years, knowing who their candidate is, that's the critical difference is. The president's up for a re-elect, the Republicans don't know who their candidate's going to be until after the convention.
Look, it all depends on turnout as well. As we know, in the United States, it's not compulsory to vote. And so in 2008, there was a fairly large Democratic turnout. By about 10 points, it exceeded the Republican turnout. Now, if that happens today, it's all over Red Rover. But Republicans on the ground feel that they're more energised, more energetic, more committed to their candidate. And so that's why this is a very tough contest to predict. The other thing to bear in mind are these all-important independents. They're about 25, 30% of the electorate. They flip and flop from election to election. Most of the available public polling evidence during the course of the last month indicates they are leaning towards Romney. So that could be crucial when it comes down to the wire. And
it's interesting the effort that the parties have been making to get people to the voting booths as well. They'll be bringing buses in individually, ferrying people, voters, to actually cast their vote. They really do get the registered voters to actually do that. We've obviously seen the superstorm have the effect, and we've seen very cold temperatures come through in some of the states as well. So, and long lines, you know, we have seen voters waiting for hours in Florida and Virginia. Some of those voters have walked away, have turned away, but it does show that there is a real enthusiasm and drive for people to get out and cast their vote, which is very heartening.